Hello there, very good evening and welcome to the news tonight. Glad you could join us this Saturday evening. Here are the top stories of this hour. Just hours after Pakistan violated ceasefire in Jammu and Kashmir, security forces foil an infiltration attempt in Kupwara district. 2 terrorists are shot while trying to cross cover. Vice President M. Venkaiah Naidu lays the foundation stone for the Regional Vocational Training Centre in Hyderabad, emphasizes the role of education and skilling women to achieve higher economic growth. In the face of global outrage over its nuclear tests, North Korean chief Kim Jong-un claims that Pyongyang is nearing its goal of equilibrium in military power with the United States. And PV Sindhu enters the finals of the Korea Open Super Series, beats China's He Jingbiao in semi-final match to set up a clash with Nozomi Okuhara of Japan. Our top story this evening, 2 terrorists were killed in the Machil sector of Jammu and Kashmir's Kupwara district on Saturday when security forces foiled an infiltration bid. The killing came just hours after the Pakistani army violated ceasefire along the international border.
An infiltration bid was foiled in Kupwara district on Saturday, with security forces gunning down 2 terrorists. The breakthrough came when troops noticed suspicious movement along the LOC and challenged the intruders. This led to an encounter in which the 2 militants were killed. Weapons have been recovered from the slain militants. The infiltration bid came just hours after Pakistan violated the ceasefire in Arnia sector, killing livestock and damaging several properties. Pakistani forces also resorted to shelling and firing using mortars, automatics and small arms.
जब ये मौसम आते हैं, ये दिन आते हैं, तो हर साल यही वातावरण हमारे साथ रहता है, तो काफ़ी फायर होता है, जिससे हमारे जो गांव हैं, जैसे यही पड़ा इधर जहाँ पे, तो अगर कहीं थोड़ा सा इधर उधर हो जाता, तो जानी नुकसान भी हो सकते थे. तो अभी माली नुकसान तो हमारा हुआ है.
वेटनरी को भी डायरेक्शन दी गई, इनकी भी जो टीमें हैं ये 24 आवर्स रहे और विद एम्बुलेंस रहे, जहां भी कोई जरूरत पड़ती है इमीडिएटली वहां जाए. यूनिवर्सिटी की बात सुनने को आई कि सैटरडे संडे को वहां छुट्टी होती है, वो अभी मैंने डीसी को यही डायरेक्शन दी है कि इमीडिएटली वो उनको कहे कि सैटरडे संडे को इमरजेंसी जो भी जानवर वहां से जाए उसका ट्रीटमेंट करे, ताकि जो जख्मी है वो बच सके. उसके साथ साथ जिस भी की जाए, लाइट की बात कही, लाइट भी हम कहेंगे रात को 24 आवर जहाँ लाइट रहे, बॉर्डर के लोग अंदर रह सके.
तकरीबन मैं 12 बजे उठा था, थोड़ी देर पहले नींद पड़ी और काफी दबा के आ रहे थे, यानी कि माटर का फायर हो रहा. ये माटर का फायर है, जो इसका रेंज है 5 किलोमीटर, 5200 मीटर रेंज होता है इसका, और ये बहुत खतरनाक चीज है. और हमारे तकरीबन अरनिया, चांदना, देवीगढ़, सही पूरा, ये सारा इसके रेंज में.
Pakistani troops targeted Indian border outposts and hamlets along the international border. The Pakistani side started firing at Indian posts in Arnia sector around midnight, finally stopping around 7 in the morning.
पाकिस्तान में जो उनकी अंदरूनी जो टूटन है, उससे लोगों का ध्यान बटाने के लिए वो भारत के इस सीमा के ऊपर जो है फायरिंग करता है, इनोसेंट लोगों को मारता है. लेकिन हमारी तरफ से कई गुना ज़्यादा फोर्स से उनको जवाब दिया जाता है.
There have been continuous ceasefire violations by Pakistan along the international border for the past 4 days, in which 1 BSF Jawan was killed and a few others were injured. Incidents of ceasefire violations by Pakistani troops have gone up sharply this year. Till August 1st, there have been 280 actions by the Pak Army. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
A Congress delegation led by former Prime Minister Manmohan Singh is in Srinagar for a number of meetings on the current situation in Jammu and Kashmir. The Congress's policy planning group on Kashmir will be in the valley for the next 2 days. During this time, they will hold talks with party leaders and workers, trade associations and civil societies. Apart from Manmohan Singh, the group comprises former Union Home Minister P. Chidambaram, leader of the opposition in Rajya Sabha Ghulam Nabi Azad and AICC General Secretary Ambika Soni.
that this delegation is an exercise of the Congress party itself to strengthen its own roots and to be constantly aware of the changes which are taking place, the social tensions with not only South Kashmir or North Kashmir, but in the state as a whole. There's a generational change in the agitational framework of your state. There's a generational change. And if a political party does not keep abreast of that change, it cannot deliver.
हमारे लिए आश्चर्य है, एक तो वो इनकार कर रहे हैं अपने दिए हुए वादे को, और एक जो यहाँ की पार्टी है जिसका बुनियाद ही जिसने बेसिक यहाँ अवाम को तैयार किया था कि हम बातचीत का सिलसिला आगे बढ़ाएंगे और कश्मीर मसले को हल करेंगे, वो यहाँ की पीडीपी पार्टी खासकर महबूबा मुफ्ती कैसे उस सरकार में बैठी है, कैसे उस पार्टनर के साथ बैठी है जो पार्टनर उसको कहता है कि हम तो किसी भी तरह से बात नहीं करेंगे.
Vice President M. Venkaiah Naidu today said that every effort should be made to empower women economically. He said that imparting vocational training to women is important as it will contribute to faster economic growth of the country.
Vice President M. Venkaiah Naidu laid the foundation of a regional vocational training center in Hyderabad on Saturday. It is one of 17 such centers that the center will open across the country to train youths for the job market every year. In his address, the Vice President emphasized the role that education and skilling of women play in higher economic growth.
If you educate a man, you educate an individual. But if you educate a woman, you educate a family. This famous quote of a Gandhian scholar and educator, Dr. James Emmanuel Weger, aptly sum up the important role women can play in the development of families, communities and nations.
Only 4.7% people of the nearly 50 crore workforce in India have received some kind of formal training. For advanced economies like Germany, this figure is 75%. While for top Asian economies like Japan and South Korea, it is as high as 80% and 96%. Over the next 5 years, India will be needing 11 crore skilled manpower in 24 key sectors.
हाई स्टैंडर्ड के स्किलिंग प्रक्रिया को यहां शुरू की जाएगी. देश में ऐसे 17 RBTI बनने वाले हैं. ये सारे जॉब मार्केट में धीरे धीरे भारतीयों की ताकत बढ़ रही है. हमारी प्रयास ये रहेगी भारत की नौजवानों को जाने की पहले स्किल करके भेजें.
The Hyderabad-based vocational training center will primarily focus on imparting skills to women in fields like fashion designing and technology, architectural assistantship, cosmetology, front office assistant, secretarial practice in English, and food and beverages services assistant. In addition, there will also be a focus on soft skills like tailoring, embroidery, and incense making. With cameraman Kamaljeet Rekhi, Krishnanand Tripaঠি's report from Hyderabad for Rajya Sabha TV.
Well, Vice President Naidu has also urged professionals and the corporate sector to adopt ethical practices and honestly pay taxes for nation building. Addressing a gathering of company secretaries in Hyderabad, he urged them to look back at Indian roots for ancient Indian wisdom like Kautilya's treatise on economics in dealing with financial and economic issues. Naidu also discussed the corporates' role in fighting the menace of shell companies and shell NGOs in the fight against black money and corruption.
Strong foundation for ethical values should be the basis for exemplary corporate governance. But before looking elsewhere for lessons in corporate governance, one should look inwards. And what's better than Kautilya's Ardhashastra? The principles and practices on economic management written by Kautilya in 4th century are relevant even today.
On a 3-day visit to Jharkhand, BJP President Amit Shah has said that the state has been getting more funds from the centre under the NDA regime. Shah said that Jharkhand's share in the central taxes was 39,938 crore rupees during the 13th Finance Commission. It has now increased to over 1,24,000 crores under the 14th Finance Commission, with central grants going up from 6,087 crores to 9,469 crore rupees. The BJP president also lauded the work done by Chief Minister Raghubar Das and said that development work is moving in the right direction. He also enumerated the work done under the leadership of Prime Minister Modi in the last 3 years.
आजादी के बाद 19,000 गांव 65 साल तक ऐसे थे जिसमें बिजली नहीं पहुंच पाई थी। उनमें से 14,000 गांवों में बिजली पहुंचाने का काम समाप्त कर दिया गया है और मई 2018 तक देश के हर गांव में बिजली पहुंचाने का काम समाप्त कर दिया जाएगा। 2022 तक देश के हर घर में बिजली पहुंचाने का काम समाप्त करने का निर्णय भारतीय जनता पार्टी की सरकार ने किया है।
And here are more national news updates in Nationwide. BSF Constable Bijendra Bahadur Singh, who was killed in firing by Pakistan, was cremated in Uttar Pradesh's Balia district. Uttar Pradesh Minister Shrikant Sharma announced that a memorial will be built in memory of the martyr at his native village. The chief of Ayodhya's Nirmohi Akhada and the oldest litigant in the Ram Janmabhoomi Babri Masjid case, Mahant Bhaskar Das, passed away earlier today. He was 88. Das was admitted to a private medical facility following breathing problems, where he later suffered a brain stroke. The Anti-Corruption Bureau today filed an FIR against leader of the opposition, Chandrakant Kavlekar, in the disproportionate assets case. In 2012, Goa police filed a case against Kavlekar under various sections of the Prevention of Corruption Act. The Ghaziabad police on Friday arrested a self-styled godman, Pratibha Nand, in Uttar Pradesh, who was allegedly involved in the murder of BSP leader Deepak Bhardwaj. Shafin Jahan, husband of a woman in the Kerala love jihad case, today filed a plea requesting the Supreme Court to call off the NIA probe. Jahan has alleged that the investigation agency is not being fair. All right, with that, let's head to international news and let's give you the latest on the Korean Peninsula. Tension at an all-time high after back-to-back missile tests. North Korea now saying it's almost reached the equilibrium of military force with the United States.
Despite global condemnation and outrage over successive nuclear tests, North Korea remains defiant. Its leader Kim Jong-un warned that his country is nearing its goal of equilibrium in military force with the United States. In a report published on Saturday, the Korean Central News Agency said Kim expressed satisfaction over Friday's launch, saying despite limitless international sanctions, Pyongyang had nearly completed the building of its nuclear weapons force. Kim's comments come just a day after North Korea fired its latest missile over Japan, being described as the country's farthest-reaching test. The UN Security Council has accused North Korea of undermining regional peace and security with its successive missile launches over Japan. Following a closed-door meeting on Friday, the Council also called for immediately implementing the UN sanctions on North Korea.
The Council condemned the highly provocative launch of a ballistic missile by the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. The Security Council stressed that all member states must fully, comprehensively and immediately implement all relevant Security Council resolutions.
Sanctions were agreed on 3 days ago, 4 days ago, and months ago, they have to be implemented. And that's a very important thing. The sanctions must be comprehensively, fully implemented and immediately implemented. And that is, I think, one of the things that we would have to and we will agree on in the Council.
It is an opportunity for all of our leaders to come together and to chart a course on the way ahead. And I hope that all of them, particularly, as I say, those representing countries that have the largest trade flows and the closest links with North Korea, will demonstrate that they are doing everything in their power to implement the sanctions of the Security Council and to encourage the North Korean regime to change the course.
US President Donald Trump said North Korea once again showed contempt for its neighbors, even as he hinted at a possible military option.
America and our allies will never be intimidated. We will defend our people, our nations, and our civilization from all who dare to threaten our way of life. This includes the regime of North Korea, which has once again shown its utter contempt for its neighbors and for the entire world community.
Russia, however, urged caution and called for meaningful dialogue instead. China, too, called on the United States to refrain from issuing threats to North Korea.
This resolution also provides for political measures that should be implemented equally. And in that sense, we consider and we called on our US partners and others to implement political and diplomatic solutions that are provided for in the resolution. And without implementing this, we also will consider it as a non-compliance with the resolution, non-fully implementing the resolution.
岛问题上，挑起紧张局势、加剧紧张局势的是日本方面，采取所谓单方面或者胁迫性行动的也是日本方面。
On Friday, North Korea launched an intercontinental missile over the Japanese island of Hokkaido that traveled 3,700 kilometers before landing in the northern Pacific Ocean. Experts say the missile can reach the US territory of Guam and is the furthest that any North Korean ballistic missile has ever traveled above ground. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
And the London police on Saturday arrested a teenager in connection with yesterday's terror attack on a tube train that left 30 people injured. The suspect was arrested under the Terrorism Act. Meanwhile, British authorities have reopened the Parsons Green station for public.
London's Kent police on Saturday arrested an 18-year-old in connection with Friday's terror attack on a tube train. The suspect was detained in the port area of Dover and is reportedly being held at a local station. Dover in southeast of London is a port town with regular ferry services to France. Meanwhile, police continued to scour through CCTV images as part of the investigation. 30 people were injured in the explosion on the train at Parsons Green station. The Islamic State militant group claimed responsibility for the attack. The tube station was reopened for public on Saturday.
We're doing everything we can. We're working really closely with the government. There's clearly a lot of soul searching that is going on and needs to go on about how we can really reduce this threat to a much lower level as soon as we possibly can. But I don't think people should get used to the idea that there will be constant attacks. However, we are trying to fight against a very considerable threat.
Prime Minister Theresa May announced late Friday that the UK terror threat level has been raised to its highest level, which means another attack is considered imminent.
For this period, military personnel will replace police officers on guard duties at certain protected sites which are not accessible to the public. The public will see more armed police on the transport network and on our streets, providing extra protection.
May also delivered a stern rebuke after the US president claimed the perpetrators responsible for bombing were known to the police. Trump took to Twitter to condemn an attack, but also appeared to suggest that British authorities should have been proactive. Trump later tried to smooth over the rift, describing May as a wonderful woman. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha Television.
Described as ethnic cleansing, the Rohingya Muslims are now struggling for basic amenities. According to the UN Children's Fund, 20,30,000 Rohingya children have no access to basic needs. Neighboring nations have gathered in expressing solidarity, and protests were held by the Muslim community at many places.
A gigantic humanitarian crisis is staring the Rohingya Muslim refugees fleeing to Bangladesh. Since August 25th, nearly 4 lakh people from West Myanmar have crossed into the country. The crowded makeshift camps in Bangladesh's Cox's Bazar are witnessing heartrending scenes of people who are scrambling for food and water.
As an humanitarian organization, World Food Programme is providing 20 kg rice to each family twice in a month. But this is our first time distribution among the new arrivals.
According to the United Nations Children's Fund, 230,000 Rohingya children have no access to basic needs. In these squalid living conditions, around 36,000 children are less than a year old and 92,000 are under 5 years. There are about 52,000 pregnant and lactating women among the refugees.
We believe there are 60% of children among them. That means maybe 240,000 children. They are clearly at risk. No, the needs have not been met. We are scaling up our response. The children are the most vulnerable. They need safe access, they need protection, they need nutrition, and they need also to keep going to school.
In about 3 weeks of the Rohingya exodus, neighboring nations have gathered in expressing solidarity. Indian Muslims came out in Tripura's Agartala to express their anger against the persecution of Rohingyas in Myanmar. Protesters raised slogans against the Myanmar government and the country's state councillor Aung San Suu Kyi. They also sought intervention of the Indian government to stop the violence.
हमारी मांग है बहुत जल्दी ये बर्बरियत के साथ जुल्म बंद हो, ये कत्ले आम बंद हो, औरतों को इज्जत लूटना को जो मामला सामने आ रहा है ये बंद हो। हम हमारी भारत सरकार म्यांमार सरकार पर प्रेशर क्रिएट करें कि इस जुल्म को बंद करें।
In Indonesia, thousands rallied in Jakarta to stand in solidarity with the persecuted community.
Tergugah dari hati saya dari ini rasa kebersamaan, rasa solidaritas terhadap manusia, bagaimana terjadi pembantaian ethnic cleansing ya, pembantaian suatu etnik genocide di Rohingya di negara Myanmar, dan kami berharap bahwa itu dihentikan secepatnya juga. Dan kami sebagai manusia, bukan sebagai umat Islam saja, tapi sebagai manusia merasa bahwa pembantaian, pembunuhan itu tidak layak lagi.
Indonesian protesters pledged to stand by their Muslim brothers and sisters in Myanmar. They also urged world leaders to take a tougher stance against the country.
Menurut saya, dunia internasional harus memberikan sanksi yang tegas kepada Myanmar. Baik itu mungkin sanksi ekonomi, bahkan kalau perlu ada ya intervensi militer dari PBB untuk menjaga keamanan rakyat di Rohingya sendiri di Rakhine.
Bangladesh has for decades faced influx of Rohingyas who are regarded as illegal migrants and denied citizenship in Buddhist majority Myanmar. But even now, a solution to the Rohingya Muslim crisis is nowhere in sight. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Typhoon Doksuri has killed at least 6 people and damaged over 30,000 houses after slamming into central Vietnam on Friday. The typhoon caused maximum damage to Ha Tin and Quang Binh provinces in the central coastal area of Vietnam. More than 5,000 houses were submerged, 19 collapsed, and nearly 24,000 houses in 3 provinces were damaged in winds that reached up to 135 kilometers per hour. Several villagers said that they had no time to transfer any of their goods as the typhoon hit them suddenly and quick. On Saturday, firefighters moved to remove uprooted trees and branches that were broken from the ground and even helped families transfer their belongings. The central coastal areas of Vietnam experienced a large-scale power outage involving over 130,000 families, and power supply is yet to be restored. However, communication lines have begun functioning. The Vietnamese Prime Minister visited the affected areas and has requested the army and police to continue helping people with shelter and rehabilitation.
Cảm thấy run sợ, khi nữa là chỉ khóc chứ không làm được cái gì nữa.
Chỉ khóc thôi chứ khi nào tí giải quyết được cái của cải đấy chứ tán tanh luôn.
Mà khi bão lớn phải đi ra ngoài. Nếu mà ở đây chết rồi.
Vậy rồi.
Thế đó là kinh nghiệm. Anh ở nhà tạm thì anh phải ra đi. Lúc bão lớn.
On to sports, an Olympic silver medalist PV Sindhu entered the finals of the Korea Open Super Series. She defeated China's He Bingjiao 21-10, 17-21, 21-16 in a semi-final match that lasted an hour and 6 minutes. In the opening set, Sindhu rushed to a 9-1 advantage before moving into the break at 11-4 after the Chinese hit out. The second set was neck and neck as both the players were tied 4-all initially, but Sindhu clinched a 5-point advantage at the break when she unleashed a body smash to which Bingjiao was unable to respond. The final set was the longest as both shuttlers looked to outwit each other. Sindhu will next face Nozomi Okuhara of Japan, who defeated world number 2 Akane Yamaguchi 21-17, 21-18 in her semi-final match. Sindhu won the China Open Super Series premiere last year, and this season she clinched the India Open Super Series and the Syed Modi Grand Prix Gold. And here are more updates from the world of sports in SportsBeat. India and Canada shared the honours on day one of the Davis Cup World Group playoff tie. Ramkumar Ramanathan won his match while Yuki Bhamri went down fighting to Denis Shapovalov 6-7, 4-6, 7-6, 6-4, 1-6 in 3 hours and 52 minutes. Ramanathan, on the other hand, defeated debutant Braden Schnur 5-7, 7-6, 7-5, 7-5 in a match that went on for 3 hours, 16 minutes. France took a 2-1 lead at home to Serbia in their Davis Cup semi-final. Pierre Hughes Herbert and Nicolas Mahut beat Filip Krajinovic and Nenad Zimonjic 6-1, 6-2, 7-6 in the doubles category on Saturday. Herbert and Mahut lost only 2 points to serve on the first set. Serbia took the first point in the tie and Dusan Lajovic then beat Lucas Pouet in 4 sets. But Jo-Wilfried Tsonga levelled it up for France by defeating Laszlo Dier in straight sets. Belgium will host Australia in the other semi-final. South African all-rounder JP Duminy today retired from Test and first-class cricket with immediate effect. Duminy, who was dropped from the Test team after the first match at Lord's in the 4-match series against England in July earlier this year, decided to focus on limited overs cricket. Duminy made his Test debut against Australia in 2008 in Perth. He made 2,103 runs from 46 tests at an average of 32.85 runs. And finally, we end this bulletin on a somber note, remembering one of our heroes, war hero Marshal Arjan Singh, who led the Indian Air Force during the 1965 India-Pakistan conflict, breathed his last at the Army's Research and Referral Hospital on Saturday. He was 98 and he had been hospitalized earlier in the day. Singh was the only officer of the Indian Air Force to be promoted to 5-star rank equal to a field marshal in the Army. He died at the hospital after suffering a cardiac arrest. An iconic figure in the country's military history, Singh led a fledgling IAF in the 1965 Indo-Pak War as Pakistan launched its Operation Grand Slam with an armoured thrust targeted at the vital town of Aknoor in Jammu and Kashmir. Marshal Singh led the Indian Air Force. The fighter pilot was awarded the Padma Vibhushan in 1965. In fact, Prime Minister Narendra Modi, Defence Minister Nirmala Sitharaman and the 3 service chiefs visited Singh at the hospital earlier in the day. And as we say goodbye to that hero, we also wrap up the news tonight here. Thank you so much for joining us.